So today I want to look at a small problem that can happen when creating a color attribute with the attribute create node, and let's look at what I mean. So first of all, I'm going to just create a grid this time. Let's do that. All right, okay, super. I'm going to come out of that. That looks good. And then this time I'm going to first of all show you what happens with a color node. So let's create a color node, and I'm going to create some color, so 0.2, maybe 1 there and 0.2 there. Okay, so it's kind of like a green color. Then I'm going to create a transform, and when I rotate this or I scale this, so let's first of all go into this, and I'm rotating this around, I can see that it does exactly what I would expect. It's moving this green grid around, and that's it. I'm rotating it. I can also scale this, of course. Let me find my scale tool, and yeah, it's doing exactly what I thought it would. Super. But let's go another way. So let me go back to my grid, and this time I'm going to create an attribute create node, just to create the color attribute exactly the same as I've done when I've used the color node here, right? So let's do the same thing. Attribute create. We've done this in previous lessons. I'm going to remember the name will be capital C and D. There we go, it's gone to black. I'm going to use the same numbers, 0.2, 1, 0.2, and remember that I need to have this as a vector. There we go. So now I've got the green. Let's transform this in exactly the same way that I did before. I'm going to rotate this, and what's happening? Okay, as I'm rotating this around, I can see that I'm changing the color. No, what's going on? Let me go back to my one with the color node right here. I'm going to go into my rotation. Can I do that? Thank you very much. There we go. And as I'm rotating around, I can see that my position is changing, but my color does not. It's baked into it, right? Which is what I would expect. Let's go to the other one. This time I will rotate. I can see that the position is changing, but also the color value is changing too. Now that might be what you want. I don't know what you're making, but I'll assume that's probably not what you want. That's really not how you think it should be designed. So how do I get around this? Well, I can go back into my attribute create, and this time what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to, let me go back there, I'm going to go to float, and I'm going to create 3 floats. Okay. First of all, actually before that, let me just quick back on vector, and let's look at this here. If I go into my transform, I look at the information, I can see it says I've got a 3 float here. If I go in here, I can check my information. I've also got a 3 float. They're the same, right? Back here, 3 float, but it also has this CLR, which means color. So what that means is that Houdini recognizes that this is a color node, and therefore that color attribute should not really be messed around with by other things. It automatically knows not to mess around with this color information when I'm using a transform. But on here, I can see that it just has 3 float, and it has VEC for vector. It's not recognizing this as a specific color attribute. Even though it's working as a color attribute, the type is not. So the way to around this, we looked at this just before, which was to go to float, make this a 3 float, which I've done here. Now if I go into my information, I'll see that it's automatically translated this into a color. Why it does that, I actually don't know, but it does. Now you may want that, you may not, but there's a few more options. Here we go here, and I can move, one moment. If I move this around, I can see that the color is now baked. That's perfect, right? Let's go back here a moment, I also have some other options here. I can select color directly from there. This will bake it into a color right there. Super. And you might want to do that. It depends on your system. I think maybe in older versions of Houdini it didn't automatically recognize this as color when you went into the CD with a float, so you might have to specify that. And there are other options. I can go back to a vector, which will give me the same issues that I had before with that moving, right? One thing you'll notice that it doesn't do is when I'm actually moving this, translating this, not rotating it, it doesn't make any difference. However, I can select position, and now this one, let's go back into this and come out a little bit. All right, come on, find it, thank you. And now you'll see that the position does change those values. So I'm guessing that 99% of the time you'll want this set to color. Although there might be some situations where you're wanting things to change color as it's moving. You know, I wouldn't particularly use this as the way to do that, but it is a possibility. But in most cases you'll look at this and you'll just think, why the hell is that changing the color? I don't know why. Well, simple is that you just transform this back, the type into a float, make it a 3 size vote, and then make sure that you have this part here set to color, and you're good to go. Okay, any questions, comments, criticisms, of course leave them below, and you guys have a great day. Bye bye.